Hi everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to another video. And today, I would like to share my thoughts on the visual novel that surpassed the masterpiece. And that, of course, is 2005's Fate Hollow Ataraxia, the sequel to 2004's legendary visual novel Fate Stay Night, which I read for the very first time last year. And I didn't even know about Fate Hollow Ataraxia until that time. When they released Fate Stay Night for the first time as an English release on Nintendo Switch and PC last year, they made the announcement that they're also going to release the remastered version, the first proper English release of Fate Hollow Ataraxia as well, the next year to celebrate its 20th anniversary right here in 2025, just a few months ago in August. And it's crazy to me how popular Fate is. Like, you've seen all the different anime adaptations from the various routes adapting Fate Stay Night. Of course, 2006 Studio Dean, 2010 Studio Dean also adapting the Unlimited Blade Works movie. Then you have Ufotable turning Unlimited Blade Works into an anime series. Ufotable again adapting the Heaven's Feel route into a trilogy of movies. Not to mention all the other spin-offs from Fate Zero, Fate Apocrypha, Fate Extra, Fate Grand Order, Fate Strange Fake, Prisma Illya. How can we forget Prisma Illya? And going back to like how it all begins with Fate Stay Night and Hollow Ataraxia in particular, the characters introduced in that visual novel that go on to continue in something like Prisma Illya, in something like Fate Grand Order, and then of course something like Carnival Phantasm, the parody OVA series that combines all the Type Moon franchises to get all the cameos there and see how it continues. And you know, I have to go back and watch Carnival Phantasm now to get more of the references, but it's just incredible, man. But anyway, my point, I was kind of going off on a tangent there. It's just amazing to me that, of course, you've had the fan translations, but to think that it took 20 years to get proper English releases on the Switch and PC for both Fate Stay Night and Fate Hollow Ataraxia, when again, these anime adaptations are extremely popular. The video games are also quite popular, from the gacha game Fate Grand Order, which I love, by the way, to one of the more recent console games, Fate Samurai Remnant. You have the remake of Fate Extra, I believe, releasing next year, so on and so forth. Like, why did it take so long for these adaptations to happen? And also, why are they only digital? Because Tsukihime has physical releases on Switch, PS4, well, PC's not physical, but it's on PC as well, but physical releases on Switch and PS4, as well as The Witch on the Holy Night. Okay, first of all, no one's probably even heard of The Witch on the Holy Night unless they're a big Type Moon fan. More people probably have heard of Tsukihime, but Fate is just more popular in terms of those franchises, so it's baffling to me that there's no physical release. But I digress. So, I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Forgive me if I go off on tangents because, you know, it's just sort of what I do here. Obviously, I strongly recommend both visual novels. Fate Hollow Ataraxia is the sequel that takes place 8 months after the events of Fate Stay Night. So, if you're watching this like, oh, should I read Fate Hollow Ataraxia? Well, you should, but you should read Fate Stay Night first. Otherwise, you're not going to know what's going on, and, you know, it expects you to obviously read that. But I guess you can also watch the anime adaptations. And someone like myself, I watched all the anime adaptations first, and I enjoy them quite a bit. But when I went back last year and read Fate Stay Night for the very first time, I was honestly kind of shocked by how many things they omitted from the series. Like, in particular, 2006 Studio Dean mainly adapts the Fate route, but near the end, they add things from Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel to sort of make their own ending. So it doesn't really adapt the Fate route properly. The Studio Dean Unlimited Blade Works movie speaks for itself. I did videos on these years ago, and that's just because it's so short. It's like 90 minutes long, so you can't really adapt the whole story there. Whereas the Ufotable anime series is much better, though I think the visual novel's better, obviously. And then the Heaven's Feel movie, same thing. You're trying to adapt the route in 3 2-hour-long movies. It's just not enough time. And especially with Heaven's Feel, there's so much backstory there. And in particular, when they talk about the third Holy Grail War, which they talk more about in Fate Hollow Ataraxia, they leave that out in Heaven's Feel, and there's just so much more to be expanded upon. And the whole deal with Zelrich, which he also has name drops in this as well. So it's just crazy how it all ties back together. But what I love so much about Hollow Ataraxia as well is, again, it already expects you to know the characters like Shiro, Saber, Rin Tosaka, Archer, Sakura, and all the other servants, Lancer, Rider, Caster, Soricho, Kuzuki, Assassin, Gilgamesh. It expects you to know all these characters and expand upon them, but it also introduces a number of new characters, such as Bazette Fraga McRements, who is also a master. And I don't remember exactly if they name-dropped her in Fate Stay Night, but they allude to her. And you get your answers after reading this. There's also the introduction to the 8th class, the Avenger Servant. I'm not going to reveal his true name because that's part of the many plot twists in Hollow Ataraxia, but you get Avenger, which again, that's where it lays the groundwork for the other series and adaptations that come afterward, where now instead of just having the 7 classes, you have this Avenger class, and then take something like Fate Apocrypha, and they add the Ruler class, and then you get to Fate Grand Order, and you have Shielder, our favorite Kohai, Miss Mash, as well as, even more classes, Foreigner, Pretender, Alter Ego, Beast, plus Avenger, Ruler, so on and so forth. And then the other new character, the new Overseer of the Church, Karen Hortensia. And again, the backstory with her, and when they reveal who her parents are, it's like, oh man, the fact that it's all connected there, it's so keto. It's so keto. So I loved all 3 of the new characters, Bazette, Avenger, and Karen. They were all fantastic. And just even more lore drops, how they talk more about the 4th Holy Grail War, which I don't know exactly when Fate Zero was written. I know Fate Zero was a light novel before it became an anime, and the anime was like, I don't know, 2011, somewhere around there, or 2012. So it might not have been back in 2005. So I'd imagine they laid out the groundwork for Fate Zero, name dropping Kiritsugu and talking about it in the flashback scenes in Stay Night and Hollow Ataraxia, but they talk more about it here, and they also talk about the 3rd Holy Grail War, and that's when the Avenger class, was summoned for the very first time by the Ainsburns. And that's how it's all connected, with the Ainsburns, Tosakas, and Matos, also known as the Bakiris. So it's just crazy to hear that. And then you get the 3rd Holy Grail War and the Eldelfelts. And a character like Luvia Eldelfelt, which I thought her very first appearance was in Prisma Illya, right? I thought that was her first time she appeared, and then her appearing in Prisma Illya makes sense when you get to the Unlimited Blade Works anime adaptations in the epilogue, and you see Rin and Luvia doing their wrestling and stuff. But no, it's because the Eldelfelts were involved in the 3rd Holy Grail War, and there's also, in Fate Hollow Ataraxia, the interactions with Rin and Luvia, and how they're distant relatives. Oh, dude, I love Luvia. My favorite Finnish waifu. So it was great to see that. And, that's probably why there isn't an anime adaptation of Fate Hollow Ataraxia either, because it's just a very interesting structure. Whereas of Fate Stay Night, you have the 3 main routes, and each route is over the course of, a couple dozen days. Like, I think it ranges from 15 to 17 days, and you just go through the daily life, like, Shiro's making breakfast, he's messing around with Taiga, he's going on a date with Tosaka or Saber or Sakura, whoever it is, and then when night rolls around, all the crazy shit goes down, and that's how the story advances there. Whereas in Fate Hollow Ataraxia, the synopsis is they're in a 4-day time loop. So they go through the same 4 days over and over again, and in the overworld, when you select what to do next, you'll have like an icon will say no, and that'll be like a new interaction you have, and then there'll be an exclamation point. The exclamation point advances the story, whereas no is more slice of life activities, from Shiro cooking, to going to school, to hanging out with Issei. There's even more characters like Ayako. We saw her in Fate Stay Night, but there's another one, Makidori. And she's just a crazy one. And there's an instance in one of the slice of life scenes where she's talking about Rob Van Dam. And, you may think, hearing a name like Rob Van Dam, oh, the translator put that there just as some kind of joke, whatever, a wrestling joke. But no, with her English, she says Rob Van Dam and how he did the frog splash and tore his ACL. And right around that time, because I was a big wrestling fan, especially back then, Rob Van Dam did get an injury around 2005, and then he came back in 2006 to be the WWE champion at ECW One Night Stand. So Makadori, who's like this crazy sports fanatic, name drops Rob Van Dam in my Japanese visual novel. It was so key, you know. Maybe it's just specific for someone like myself, but I was going crazy with that. So they go through the same 4 days over and over again until you feel like advancing the plot, and you get more details as what's going on with this woman, Bazette Fraga McRemnants, and the new overseer at the church, Karen, as well as Avenger, and how all the pieces fit together. It also takes a lot of aspects, I think, from Heaven's Feel, where Heaven's Feel was one of the darker route, more horror and suspense. And especially when nighttime rolls around, you get the horror and suspense and the music. Oh, the music. The OSTs in this, which I praise the OST from the original Fate Stay Night as well. And in particular, during the finale of Fate Hollow Ataraxia, there are 2 songs that play during the finale, which show up again and play in Fate Grand Order. And as soon as I heard the songs reading Fate Hollow Ataraxia, I'm like, oh my god, it's the Fate Grand Order songs. But then I thought to myself, like, no. This came out 15 years before Fate Grand Order, so that couldn't be possible. It's Fate Grand Order using the Hollow Ataraxia songs. And man, what an epic finale. So, another thing I really like is just how it expands on a lot of the characters you already knew from the original visual novel. Like throughout the slice of life stuff, you'll run into Lancer, and he's at various spots throughout the week. Throughout the 4 days, where he'll be fishing, he'll be working his part-time jobs, and he's just, laying low. But as you talk to him, and all of them, but I'm using Lancer as an example, he'll talk about his past, and he starts name-dropping other characters, again, who show up in Fate Grand Order, but are also part of Lancer, Cuckoo Lane's mythology. And such names are Scott Hotch, Satanta, which Satanta was Cuckoo Lane before he became Cuckoo Lane, and then he also he mentions a few others, but also in particular Queen Mebd, who you know Queen Mebd from the 5th Singularity in Fate Grand Order. So as Lancer was giving his backstory and name dropping all these characters, I'm like, oh my god, it's Fate Grand Order again. But then I think, no, Hollow Ataraxia influenced Fate Grand Order. So it's just a whole cycle of me marking out as I'm reading this. But then, so going over to someone like Ryder, she also has a part-time job. There's a bunch of funny scenes of her riding her bicycle. And then you get her backstories. And also, you see the other Gorgon sisters. There's the 3 Gorgon sisters. Ryder, Medusa, and then Steno and Uriel. So you get all them. And then Avenger being the sort of corrupted servant. There's an instance where Ryder, Medusa, is wavering, like going fully evil. And if you know who Medusa really is, especially in Fate Grand Order, the evil, corrupted version, her Avenger class, she becomes Gorgon. And Gorgon is in this, too. Likewise, you get more of Castor's backstory and how she's the witch, Medea. And it goes into her with Jason and the Argonauts and all the other Greek heroes. And it's just, oh my god, it's so fucking good. So also, I just have to say, because this is sort of me with my channel, is Gilgamesh. Which Gilgamesh, I feel Gilgamesh does not get the respect he deserves unless you've read the visual novels or played Fate Grand Order. If you've only watched the Fate Stay Night anime adaptations, you're not going to like Gilgamesh. I mean, I kind of like Gilgamesh, but you appreciate him even more with Fate Hollow Ataraxia and Grand Order. So, in particular, in Unlimited Blade Works, there's an instance where Gilgamesh walks past Archer and he goes, Faker! And that's one of my favorite phrases that I use that against my enemies. I call them all fakers. And so Gilgamesh also uses the word faker in Hollow Ataraxia, but there's an instance where he, instead of using the word faker, he says, you counterfeiter. And it's like, you counterfeiter. Is that supposed to be an even worse insult than faker? Oh man, it was great. So, what more can I say, man? The entire Fate series, I love it. I adore it. I think it's fantastic. After finishing Hollow Ataraxia, I actually, when you get to the very end, it gives you your percentage on how much you completed. And I was at 97.6%. So I'm like, dude, I gotta get 100%. And so I went back and I missed a few scenes, very good scenes. that I'm glad I did go back for. And of course, the true epilogue after the proper ending. And I went through the ending a second time just to see, and it was even better the second time, I'd say. You know, because I kind of knew what to expect, so I was looking out for other things. So it was just great. And I just been thinking ever since I finished it, like, man, I gotta go back and read Fate Stay Night and read Hollow Ataraxia again, but, you know, at a certain point, I gotta move on to my other backlog games, and even my other Type Moon backlog games, because I still need to read The Witch on the Holy Night and Tsukihime, which I was looking into this other one. It's called, like, Kara no Kyakai or something like that. That's with Shiki Ryogi, which I just got Shiki Ryogi in Fate Grand Order as one of the 4-star welfare servants. They do those festivals every couple of months, and you get the free 4 stars. So I got her, and I understand. I think that's, I don't know if it's a visual novel or maybe it's a light novel, but there's a couple movies, so I might need to look into that. But definitely the next Type Moon visual novel I'm going to read is The Witch on the Holy Night, which my friend Galarion recommended. I read that one next, then Tsukihime. But I can't recommend this series enough, guys. Maybe, okay, so the visual novels are better, without a doubt. They're better. They're the definitive experience. If you want all the details, it's the definitive experience. But maybe for new fans, if you're like, oh, how do I get into Fate? Maybe watch the anime adaptations first. Watch 2006 Studio Dean, Fate Stay Night. The 2010 movie of Unlimited Blade Works if you want to, but the UFO Table anime adaptation is just better because it has more time than just 90 minutes. And then the Heaven's Feel movies, and then go back and read the original visual novel. And then maybe you can appreciate the visual novel better with all the twists and how it expands on more things. And then, of course, read Hollow Ataraxia, because I've never read a more satisfying conclusion to a story. And, like, you know, the ending to Fate Stay Night was very good, especially, like, they expect you to go Fate, Unlimited Blade Works, Heaven's Feel. And especially the ending of Heaven's Feel, it has a sort of optimism at the end, but there are some loose ends. And those loose ends get tied up in Hollow Ataraxia. Like, you know, how did Kirei Kotomine get control of Lancer? Well, that's answered in Hollow Ataraxia. And so much other stuff. And, like, I just love how it expands more on the lore of the 3rd Holy Grail War, and even laying out the groundwork for the 4th Holy Grail War, which, of course, we got the Fate Zero many years later. But I love the lore stuff, so yeah. And then again, the name dropping of Zelrich, which, you know, in Fate Stay Night you get the Azoth Blade and the Jeweled Sword of Zelrich, and how Zelrich also ties into the greater Type Moon universe in Tsukihime, which again, I haven't read Tsukihime yet, but I do know that much. And also, another note I like to make is just the fact that, like, the maids, Ilya's maids, Sayla and Lizret, and how they're sort of connected in a way maybe to Hisui and Kohaku from Tsukihime, just because I think they're maids as well, so there's got to be some sort of connection. And also Illya, man, like, Illya is such a great character that she really did deserve the 4th root for Illya. Like, what happened with that, man? But yeah, she has great moments in Hollow Ataraxia as well. So what more can I say, man? Again, I'm trying not to spoil too much stuff, but maybe I did in expanding some of the characters, but there's just so much to talk about. I very much enjoyed reading this. Again, just for reference, Fate Stay Night, again, is 3 roots, okay? Fate, Unlimited Blade Works, and Heaven's Feel. And with that, there's technically, I guess, 6 proper endings, 5 proper endings, and then you get, like, the last episode epilogue ending. If you know, you know. And then there's quite a number of bad endings, including the quote-unquote bad ending, Sparks Liner High. Is it really a bad ending? I don't know. So that took me 100 hours to read Fate Stay Night, and just for reference, because there's 1 proper ending in Hollow Ataraxia, plus the epilogue, it took me 60 hours. So, quite long, but I'm used to playing 100-long JRPGs, and if the story's good, might as well keep going. And obviously, if you're familiar with visual novels, you already know it's just reading. And then every now and then you get prompted with a choice. Although in Hollow Ataraxia, there's also a bunch of mini-games. There's the Illya Castle minigame, which you get Berserkar, which Berserkar, again, shows up in Carnival Phantasm. So that's cool. And then also the Hanafuda card game, which there's a story with the Hanafuda card game, but I couldn't really get into the card game. It was, I don't know, not that it was challenging, but I was at the point where I'm like, I don't want to play cards. But there's a story there, and there's a couple different campaigns where, you know, you get characters from Fate Prototype, and you get, like, the Prisma Illya trio, Mio, Chloe, which they call Kuro. That's what Chloe is, I guess, the translation for Kuro. And Illya. And then there's also Nero, Tamamo, no Mei, and a few others. And Kiritsugu. There's a couple different campaigns in the Hanafuda card game. So I might have to at least look up the cutscenes, because I don't know if I want to play through that game. But it's cool that they include it. Anyway, guys, I loved it. It was so good. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe a bit of a rambling mess, but I just had to get my thoughts out there. And I strongly recommend it. My game of the year. The Fate series is among one of my favorite franchises I've ever read, watched, and played. And it sort of reinvigorated me to go back and play Fate Grand Order again. I've had Fate Grand Order on a pseudo hiatus because I still go in and play the dailies and, you know, grind materials, but I haven't advanced the main story in some time since I did my video on Pseudo-Singularity II, Agartha. So I gotta continue that, and you know what, maybe I will. So I'll continue Fate Grand Order. And as far as my next proper game goes, I'm gonna play and review The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak. And then eventually, when I get back to the Type Moon grind, I'm gonna read The Witch on the Holy Night. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Everybody have a great day, and peace out.
99.